for those who were not at my part one, part two, don't worry about it. It's not like a TV series where you have to watch the first two to understand the third one. I'm just basically using the same topic, but talk about related issues, which I think my passion, of course, and my career is in psychology. So part of the goal here is really to sort of educate people about what modern psychologists do. And since I'm also in the Chan circle, I'm sort of like a translator, right? Translate what we do is also relevant to our Chan practice. Just curious, there are people on YouTube as well.
Yes, there are a couple of them coming in. I'm sure it's gonna come more later. So I'm typing it in
Sure.
with
And the
folks.
reason I ask is because I think it's always more interesting if we have like a discussion about a
Exactly.
topic than a lecture, because a lecture, I mean, lecture is, you could just read the book for the lecture, really. You don't need me, you know? All right, I mean, seriously, right? I mean, so it's more interesting just come in and have a discussion about whatever we're going to talk about today. And, and you may raise good questions, that help
Yeah.
all of us to sort of have a different way of looking at our charm
Hmm.
practice. So let me just pull out my slides. Let's see. Yeah. So here is my slides.
Yep.
Okay.
Can see
All
it.
right. So I think I always start out by introducing sort of my professional interests. I'm an immigrant to this country, so I think in general, like any immigrant in this country, we're kind of like people who have like one foot in two worlds for everything, pretty much. I mean, as immigrants, we kind of like experience everything in through two different lenses almost, in some way or some sense. And And part of my experience as an immigrant is that when I learn anything new, I would always use what I already know to understand what I'm learning that's new, right? So when I'm learning a Western theory about psychology, I would bring in my Eastern training of psychology, which is the Chan, right? If you think about it. So by doing this kind of like comparative learning, my Eastern training helped me to understand my Western training better, and my Western training helped me to understand Chan better. So I hope, as part of my talking, as part of our discussion is, can we all find some similarity and differences between the sort of the Chan practice and the Western approach towards our mental health. After all, I think we're all human. Human are just human. I mean, 5,000 years ago, human are no different than human today in some sense. Dukkha is the same 5,000 years ago as today. I mean, it's like suffering may take different content, but they all have something similar, which is no matter what we do, there's always this feeling of, it's not good enough. Right? There's this that kind of sense. So, sounds good. Sounds good. All right. So today, I think part of the reason I use this title is flourishing because that's sort of the key word in the field of psychology that studies well-being, right? Well-being. And I think in the last two lectures, we also talk about what does it mean to live a good life. So what's well-being? I think the best way to think about that is sort of what does a good life looks like, right? When someone live a good life, what do they experience? What kind of emotion they have? What kind of activities do they do? And this is not a new topic. I think in general in the field of psychology, we're always kind of interested in this question, like, well, what does it mean to be happy? And how do we measure that? And so, for example, you know, in the past, a simpler a simpler study would be like, okay, let's say we measure people's happiness. I mean, we use self-report, right? So we ask people how happy they are. We ask them to sort of write it down. And so for here's an example, let's say 1995, where the researchers, Myers, they look up like 916 different researches where it's studying about happiness, studies about happiness. That's like over 1 million people, over 45 countries. And basically, doing statistics, they convert it into like a 10-point scale where 5 is like neutral, 0 is very unhappy, 10 is extreme happy. And when they sort of just calculate the statistics of all these people, then you get sort of a bell curve, right? The bell curve is that if 5 is like neutral, then the average is about 6.75. That's sort of like moderately happy on average, all of us. So where are you guys on this chart right now? If you have to
Right
guess.
now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. If it's like this, the same question I could ask you, right? Hey, if you're gonna
Well,
rate how happy you are so far,
more than a 10 because you're here, Peter.
Oh, thank you. But so here's the question: does it mean that you only have a good life if you score 8, 9, or 10? Since 6.75 is average, right?
Hmm.
So does it mean that living a good life? Can you declare that you have a good life if you only score more than like 7, more than average?
I think it would be fluctuating, right? Because just like what Chan and Dharma teaching us, the impermanence. So the feeling of, having a good life that may be, going up and down, with the general populations and all that good stuff.
Hmm.
Myself, for instance, maybe like that, but generally trending towards that.
Uh-huh. Well, I mean, our emotions sort of like weather a little bit, right?
Hmm.
It's like it's changing every day, but our overall mood is more like climate, right? You know how like at the East Coast, the climate is you have like a sharp distinction, right? Like if you
Okay.
live in
Yeah.
London, it's like I don't know, it's always raining. I don't know, it's like one of those, right?
Yeah,
So let's
exactly.
say, of course, our mood changes on a regular basis, but if on average you are like below 5. Does that mean you're does that mean you don't have well-being or you don't have a good life? This was the question the researcher was asking.
Mm, okay.
Yeah. Debbie, what do you think? If you score below 5, does that mean your life sucks or
Right now, I'm over 6.7 and a half.
but let's say somebody right now, I mean, like if on average, right? Like now we're not talking right now, but on average for the past month, you're feeling like a 3 or 4.
Peter,
Does that mean your life is not good?
Peter，英文
Yeah?
业障怎么讲啊？业力。
Or
Um,
like
karma?
karmic
Yeah, calm. That's a calm. Yeah, like when I'm not in a good position, then I just pray the
okay,
Buddha's will 加持我。
when you hit difficulty, okay. Um but here's the point. Obviously, if we're talking about on average, there's a lot of people below average, right? If technically speaking, 50% of people are below 6.75, right? Make sense? So does that mean all these people are not so happy? we're not living a good life, that doesn't make sense either, right?
Hmm.
Toronto right now, most people are
Yeah.
below
Yeah.
below
But
5.
I think, yeah, so this chart is basically saying what? That maybe living a good life is more than just feeling happy all the time, right? Because having a positive emotion is just of the one of many aspects of a good life, right? That's that makes sense. Um, so I think there are different theory on what does it mean to live a good life. Today, I'm just going to talk about one of the most sort of popular one. It's called a PERMA theory. I'm not sure I talked about it first two episode or not, but if I didn't, hey, or if I did, doesn't matter. Let's just talk about it again. Um, so PERMA is it's one of the common theory in the field of positive psychology to address the fact that to live a good life is more than just having good emotions, right? After all, we all have good and bad emotions, and they all have their purpose and function. So PRMA are really standing like the 5 characteristics that we can observe from research. Like what are the characteristics that are basically independent towards each other, statistically speaking? Like 5 different dimensions of a person that we could observe when they do live a good life, or when they feel that their life is good, worth living, right? So P stands for what? Stands for what we have been talking about so far. One of the first component that we can observe from many people that if they report a good life is what? Positive emotion. Positive emotion. Okay. So what is it? So again, let's just review again. One of the most popular one of the most popular theory to describe what does it mean to have a good well-being, that a person living a flourishing life is that they tend to have these 5 characteristics. The first one is positive emotion. So usually people live a good life, and this is probably the most obvious one. That's why we keep thinking, okay, if you're happy, that must mean you're good, you know? So some of the common positive emotions are like what? Other than simple happiness, could be things like what? Connectedness, like the sense of love, sense of hope, right? They have serenity, they feel peaceful, right? They have energy. Um, Make sense? Maybe they're also more compassionate, having loving kindness towards self and other. Like what usually when you live a good life, you are more likely to experience, right? You will experience more of this kind of emotion in general. In general. So one question today we can think about is if you do you feel you have experienced any of these kind of positive feeling enough in your life, right? Feeling hopeful, feeling loved, right? Feeling connected, right? I mean, it's like one thing we can sort of reflect on it a little bit. And also, if we don't feel enough about it, right? If we don't feel loved, for example, you're like walking around feeling as someone who's not so lovable as a person. Is there anything that we can do to help us experience more positive emotions, right? So, so these are like the first dimension. So again, in research, we kind of have to, again, we have to define what does it mean to live a good life, right? What does it mean to live a life that's worth living? And one dimension that can describe a good life is positive emotion.
Hmm.
So makes sense, right? This is like not rocket science here, right? Now, what does E stand for? that's just let's think about this one. E. Any guess? Other than just feeling good emotions.
Good question.
E. And by the way, for those who's interested in the consciousness only school, right? They talk about the 51 mental factors. Bunch of those mental factors are like good mental factors, right? Which are also part of the what? Some of them are the positive emotion, right? Right, positive mental factors, right? So for those who is interested in the conscious only school, they often talk about what, like how to bring out more our positive mental factors in our Buddhist training, right? So what does E stand for? Is Jen, are you around? Do you want to give a shot?
Oh, hi there. Sorry, I came in a little bit late, but I'm reading your PowerPoint presentation currently right now. So I believe you're asking for the second character for PERMA. The first thing
Yeah.
that came to mind, well, you already actually interpreted positive emotion. Immediately, consciously, my mind came out with the E as emotional intelligence.
Oh, good. Well, I mean, you're on the right track. I mean, emotional intelligence kind of cover some of the perma component, right? I mean, they all related, by the way. People who have good well-being tend to have good emotional intelligence. That's for sure. That's for sure. But good guess. Good guess. E is quite relevant to our sangha. E stand for engagement. People who live a good life are more likely to be able to live in the moment, right? To be engaged, to be engaged. They are more likely to be able to become one with what they do. Where how our charm practice always talk about how where your body is, your mind is. This is really the engagement component, right? This is and we do it in a way that we know our sweet spot. It's not like we're engaged with the full force, right? In our charm practice, we always say being a present but also relaxed at the same time, right? So it's not like a forceful concentration. It's like we naturally become absorbed in what we are doing, right? We are concentrated in the present, right? By the way, what is the present moment? Like what is the present?
活在当下。
对对，但是什么是当下？
In this moment.
Yeah, but the moment you said this moment's already gone.
It's all gone.
It's already gone.
True.
The moment you try to find this moment's already gone. Because every moment's empty. So how the hell you know where is the present moment then? Right? Past is already past.
Yeah.
Future did not happen yet. And where's your mind? Right? Um, of course, when we train people, we always tell, right, when we teach meditation, we always say, come back to the present. But present, if you try to conceptualize present, you can never really find it. So the best way to define the present or the present moment is to use a method, right? We let the method becomes the present moment. Basically, that's the way we do it, right? So when we're doing sitting meditation, we're using our method, counting the breath, following the breath, right? Asking a huatou. That method itself is the present moment. And in daily life, when we're doing what? When we're walking, when we're singing, when we're answering phone, the task at hand is our present moment because that's our method. So, I'm just talking about if you're not sure where the present moment, the best way to do is always just know what your task at hand is and just do that. Then you are naturally in the present, right? You're naturally in the present and you flow with the present. Now, if you play sports, you're even more likely to have or if you meditate, if you are a good meditator, then you're more likely to experience what's psychologists call it a state of flow. The state of flow. And people describe it differently, but it's a state usually when people are in a state of flow. So sometimes the great athletes talk about how, when they're playing sport, they kind of like what? Like time and space dissolve, right? The sense of self dissolve, right? Right. Like the dancer and the dance become one. You cannot tell the difference between the dance and the dancer. Um, I think in our Chan tradition, we just call that what? Like a unified state, right? Right. So if you're really engaged, you are more likely to experience different kind of unified states. But be careful with that. Don't hold on to it, okay? Yeah. That's the difference between a cult leader and non-cult leader, like right. The most common problem is like when people experience good experience in meditation, they kind of hold on to it. They kind of like keep it as if their own, and they think that's what they deserve, or they become a trophy or something. I mean, um, so be careful with that. Be careful with that. But I mean, putting it aside, if you could just love what you do, then you naturally will be in a state of engagement. Like when you're doing something you really love to do, you're naturally in it. You don't need to make a big deal out of it, right? So the more activities you could find in life that help you to become engaged, the more interesting life can be, right? Isn't it? So that's E. Debbie, you want to guess what R mean? R, R. Any clue? Any clue? Warren, R.
I'm gonna leave it to others. I cheated. I looked it up.
You looked it up already? Oh my God.
So I would what do you call it? Disclude myself. Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
I can take the
Um,
shot, Peter.
sure. Jen, you didn't look it up?
I know, like I said, I came in late and I'm just kind of like, but I think when you talk about engagement, just in general, I think what immediate popped up in my mind is you have to deal with things or with people, I guess, and immediately that comes to mind like relations or something, or
Hmm.
even when you're in a present moment, you make yourself being aware of certain things so there is a relation that is connected or interconnected or integrated with something or someone.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah, very good. Very good guess. Yeah. R stand for relationship. Right?
Oh, okay, close enough.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
said
very
relation.
close. Very close.
Okay.
Very close. Well, I mean, the study of Chan is the study of relationship anyway, because what is emptiness? Emptiness is relationship, It's like that is in some sense, right? In some sense, that's what it is. Um, I think out of all five, this might be the most important one. If I'm gonna take one as the most important one, the strongest predictor of who live a good life or not, the strongest predictor would be the R, I would say. Like R is the best predictor of who will live a good life or not. People who live a good life have meaningful relationship. Okay, they have meaningful relationship. When I say meaningful relationship, I don't mean how many friends you have on your Instagram or Facebook. It's not like how many people you have in your life. It's it's more that do you have people who you feel safe with, right? Do you have people in your life who you feel safe to talk to, who you feel you can rely on? When you are in a difficult situation, would you have people to stand up for you, help you, right? Be there for you, right? It's and believe me, we all will have difficult time in life. And would you be able to have someone that you can rely on? That's the kind of relationship that we're talking about here. So it's not about how many, but it's about really good people that would support you. So so if you think about this for a second, then in the Buddhist circle, Sangha is very important, right? After all, I mean, there's a reason why we're here, and there's a reason why we say we should be talking to each other, right? And it's because when we're talking to each other, we're building relationship, right? Basically, right? There's a reason why we do what we do here. And so that's something for you to reflect on, right? Relationship. Do we have people? So I want you to think about this. Reflect a little bit about how the people in your life, are they people that kind of give you a lot of energy, give you a sense of love, or they are kind of like draining you away your energy, you know? It's like are you surrounding yourself with people that's kind of like sucking you away, making you feel unloved, making you feel not deserved? I mean, like, or are you with people are you with people who like give you support, making you feel safe, you know? And when I say feeling safe, what like how would someone make you feel safe? Here, an example of that would be a person you're willing to share your most shameful aspect without feeling afraid. That would be a safe person, for example. Make sense, right? So I think the R is always something we can always work on for our whole life. We can always work on it. I don't think this is not something we can just forget about because relationship needs work. Relationship needs to be maintained. So it's not fancy. It's a lot of it requires a lot of energy, right? In some sense, to work on relationship, to keep the right people around us, and also to sort of keep distant from the people that's not good for us. Either way is hard work in some sense, right? Again, to like so when we're right now when we talk about this component, one thing again we can reflect on is how often do I surround myself with the people I would want to surround myself with, you know? This is something it's and of course it's not as easy. Let's say you're at work and then you have coworkers that's really like mean and not helpful. So sometimes it's make it difficult for us to distance ourselves from that. But you know, like that's how can we find ways to strengthen our current relationship and develop new connections? And again, this is something I don't think I have an answer for this, but at least we have a direction in life, right? Direction in life. How do we? So in Chinese, we always say what 成佛前先结好人缘, okay?
Hmm.
Don't worry about being a Buddha, just make good connection with people first. Right? Yeah. And we see that a lot in church, in temple, you know. There are people who do a lot of right meditation, they meditate a lot, they read a lot of sutra, but they're just hard to get along with, you know. It's like yeah, right? Makes sense, right? All right. And
Right on.
Yeah, M stand for what? M. Debbie, you want to give a shot again? M? No? No? Hi, Warren, you want to give the answer? M stand for?
Meaning.
Yeah, meaning, right? Meaning. Meaning. Yeah. Yeah. Meaning is one of the, I mean, of course, it's also very important. Before we talk about meaning, well, let's first talk about, does life have meaning? Debbie, life has meaning?
假象是有的，
You sure?
假象 yes， 真相就没
Yeah.
有，无相就
Life
没
has
有。
meaning? Okay. And
Yes.
Jen, life has meaning?
Sure, of course. I think, I mean, I always constantly ask myself, what's the purpose of life?
Uh-huh.
What's the purpose of being?
So do you feel there's a purpose?
Absolutely.
And who's giving that purpose? Nah, trick question.
It's a good question.
Yeah, who gives life purpose, you know? Like, do you born with a purpose, or are you born to give life a purpose? Maybe that's another way to think about it, right? Yeah.
I think
Warren,
as
what?
long as you
Yeah.
provide one provides, I guess, value for the purpose in life, then that gives it meaning.
Uh-huh. So in other words, then you're saying then life kind of start out with no purpose, right? Because you can only give something a purpose when they start out with no purpose. That makes sense?
Mhm.
This is an important part, because if do you think our life has something that's like, is there a purpose in our life that's like constant and always there? You know, do we have a purpose in life that's always there, that's constant, that's independent of itself? No, Debbie, no?
Up to Debbie now.
No?
That's no. That's why 无常嘛，对吗？
Say that again, Debbie. Sorry, missed that.
哎，nothing in 没有什么都是怎么讲？哦，sorry，
Impermanence, she meant.
yes yes.
Impermanence, she
Okay.
said. Life is
Okay.
impermanence.
All right.
If life is impermanence, then that means what? Meaning is also what? Meaning can also change, right? Right. And the meaning we give to life is also a lack of substance, right? Which also means what? In some sense, life, the meaning of a life is what? Also empty.
林思松 when I was young, I have a question. When I was
Yeah.
under 40, when I have my two young kids, I have a lot of hope and meaningful and all good relationship, etc., etc. Now I turn 60, everything is negative. Is it me or it's just the way I was?
Well, I'm gonna go back to what we were saying earlier. Nothing is constant, right? So at this moment, it could be negative, but it doesn't always have to be, right? Yeah. So I'm not. So when we talk about meaning and purpose, if you believe there's purpose, there's meaning, then in some sense, it also means what someone's giving meaning to it, right? And guess who's the one should give meaning to your life? You hope, right? I hope it's you, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. But it's precisely because the empty nature, therefore, it could give meaning to something, right? So if you understand what I'm talking about correctly, then can you see how we kind of born to this world in some sense? Life is like a big blank slate waiting for you to make a picture out of it.
Kind of like a blank canvas, right? Creating your own masterpiece of life.
Yeah. Life
And
is, yeah. Life is an art piece, right? In some sense, right? That's one way to look at life. Life is our art. Life is our what artistic art piece, you know. But here's uh, but here's a good question then. If you're if you're the one need to draw your masterpiece on this big canvas, do you think people like that idea or not?
what do you mean by that? Other people? Is that what you're saying?
Y-
Other than
Do,
the,
do, do you think in general people like the idea that are they are the one that give themselves purpose and meaning?
oh yeah.
Yeah,
And
Warren, you sure?
yeah, absolutely. From that sense, because this, that kind of pop into mind. Somewhere along the way, I was, learning about the men's law, the hierarchy of men's law.
Yeah.
Right, when we're a baby, and when we're born, right, the only purpose to cry and feed ourselves and all that, right, the physiological, that it's, for ourselves, and then all the way at the top, is self-actualization. So
Hmm.
when we are able to give ourselves a purpose, and through time, right, as we grow older, and hopefully more wise, that the self-actualization, going towards that way.
Hmm. Well, we can self-actualize when we know the purpose
Yeah,
of our life, right?
exactly.
But I'm gonna come back to my original question though. If you believe you're the one that can give purpose to your life, it also means what? You have the freedom to give yourself any purpose in your life, right?
But there's only more than just the self, right? Because we talked about Dharma, right? The interdependency of everything, right? The cause conditions and all that. It is through encountering too, right? All the kind of like a dish, right? Everything that
Uh-huh.
kind of all mixed together. That this is where the change in purpose, through life, through the various encounters, the cause and conditions,
Uh-huh.
give rise, to maybe, for for a lot of people, deeper and deeper meaning. I myself,
Yeah.
for example, encountered Dharma Mountain, years ago, and that gave me an added purpose and meaning in
Hmm.
life
Yeah.
as well.
And you feel you chose it or it just happened to run into you?
Well, at first I ran into it. I learned meditation by accident.
Yeah, yeah.
I think, and by happenstance, and then just gradually it grows, and
Mhm.
I made that my own purpose.
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting question.
Yeah.
And because here's the challenge of life. The challenge of life is really that if we have the power to give ourselves purpose, then it also means what? I don't know, Spider-Man's uncle say, great power comes with, heard this one? Great power comes with great responsibility.
Yeah.
Which also means what? We are what? Responsible, right? For which direction in life that we should take. Life, I would say without purpose, it's almost like a little boat. It's almost like a little boat on a vast ocean that we don't know where we're going. And because we don't know where we're going, so when a big wave hit you, you just go that way. When a small wave hit you, you just go this way, right? You have no. And in the ancient time, how do people know where they're going on a vast ocean? They tend to have what? Look up sort of the compass or the North Star, right? So what purpose is, what meaning is really, you have to ask yourself, what is the North Star in your life? What is the North Star in your life, right? This little boat, where are you going with all these meditation practice, your work, your job, your marriage? Where are we going with all this, you know? Right. That makes sense? That's the challenge. That's a challenge. And by the way, you know, what's the most common reason why people come, one of the most common reason why people come to therapy is actually they have difficulty living in a life. They may have everything, but they have difficulty seeing purpose and meaning in what they're doing. And when you don't know the purpose and meaning of what you're doing, it's almost like you're floating in a space, you know, outer space. You're like a person floating in outer space. You don't know where you're going. It's actually quite scary, if anything. And because you don't know where you're going and outer space is very cold, so you kind of have to wear like a space suit to protect yourself a little bit. And the space suits are sort of our like, you know, our personal idea, personal beliefs. That's like giving us some little comfort here and there. Right? I mean, but at the end of the day, where are you going? You know? So this one is actually quite interesting one. And one way to sort of think about it is, you know, when you woke up in the morning, do you have anything that you're looking forward? Right? Like, did you wake up in the morning to know where you're going with all these, right? With whatever you're given today. And finally, if A is quite concrete, you know, usually people live a good life do experience some form of achievements, big or small. Of course, when we talk about achievement, there are achievement that's defined by our culture, right? Like in every culture, we have some kind of definition. Oh, you know, you make achievement if you make this amount of money, if you have this kind of house, right? If you have this kind of car, that's called achievement. But the achievement we're talking about here are not the achievement defined by other, but it's more defined by yourself. Like, do you feel that you have achieved something, right? That you feel good about. Okay. And I would say that when people do live a good life, they they tend to focus less on the product, but more on the process. Um, so you know how in Japan, Japanese are quite uh, serious about like craftsmanship, right? Like 匠人精神, right? You know, like if you do one thing right, you do it. Like if they even if they have like a very simple job, they would do it right all the time. Actually, there's like one good movie recently, you know, in Japan. It's about the janitor who cleaned the bathroom, you know, and he go to the bathroom and clean the bathroom every day, and he feel good. He feel he has achieved something, right, by cleaning the bathroom correctly, you know. So achievement is not necessarily defined by other people, but really more defined by yourself. Do you feel you live your life in a way that you feel that you have achieved something every day, right? Every day. Make sense? Make sense? Yeah. So again, in general, just to throw it out there, these are sort of the 5 dimensions. We can sort of examine ourselves a little bit to see whether or not that we have the characteristics of a good life. And you can also reflect a little bit about how our charm practice, it's almost pretty much related to all these 5 factors anyway. Right? I mean, there's a reason why we're doing charm practice, because if you do the charm practice correctly, they should help you in all 5 dimensions. Right? I mean, more or less, right? In general. And by the way, of course, the field this is not the only model, by the way. And there are like other way to measure. So here's an example of how one of many ways we use to measure PERMA. So this is like a theoretical model, but people also develop ways to measure your PERMA. And this is just one of the many measure. So don't take it too like seriously. But you could see how they ask question and then you rate it and they give you a score. So you could try it out on your own. You could leave it here. I mean, it's on YouTube later on, or you could just test it out yourself. But this is not the only way we measure a good life. In science, we also have other way to measure what does it mean to live a good life. Some are more focused on hedonic well-being, and some are more focusing on eudaimonic well-being. Hedonic here really means like pleasure, like satisfaction, and or like positive emotion, negative emotion. Eudaimonic is focused more not on emotion, but more on growth, relationship, purpose. So anyway, this is just a quick introduction on how in the field of psychology, we have different ways to assess and to study what does it mean to live a good life. And so I always highly recommend go check out these topics. Now, of course, it sounds good to live a good life, but like, what's the real actual benefits? I mean, based on scientific research, right? And so we know intuitively, well, I want to live a good life, but like, what exact benefit do you actually get out of it? Like, scientists actually study this kind of topic, like if you do have PERMA, what would your life look like a little bit, right? So here are some of the common sort of benefits we actually observe in the scientific studies. Like for example, people who experience positive emotion, it's not just good. It's not just they only experience positive emotion. It's like they actually tend to live longer, for example. Okay. So, and they tend to have better relationship and work performance. Okay. And when people are able to engage in what they do, they tend to do better and they have better jobs. They tend to have better satisfaction in terms of their school work or job environment, work environment. And when people have closer relationship with family and friend, it's also associated with greater health and greater happiness, just based on research alone. Okay. And also, when people do have a direction in life, they do have better quality of life in all different indexes. And finally, accomplishment. Again, when people feel accomplished, they tend to report better subjective well-being. Um, so I think these are not surprising results, but the difference here is what, like, we tend to use scientific studies to sort of do a systematic way of studying them and measure them. And so here's an example, just to give you an example on how we study people who live a good life. So, or well-being. This is like the famous nun study. So basically, when in the past, when people want to be a nun, they have to write essays to apply. They write like personal essay to apply to be a nun. So what the researcher do is they look up 180 nuns and they go back and get their essays when they first apply to be a nun. And basically what they do is they read the essays and they kind of rank how much of positive emotions are expressed in their personal essay. Make sense? So, and then when the scientists would just look up the essays, they notice that and so you can kind of split the nuns into like what? Nuns that has a lot of positive emotion in it and nuns that have the least happiness emotion in it. And they could show that about 90% of those happy nuns, they live past the age of 85, whereas only 34% of the unhappy nuns live past to 85. Right. So quite interesting. Right. These are just like a typical example that we show one way of doing research, just to show how positive emotion do have very concrete benefits for people. Good. Yeah. And why is that? Just here's one quick theory on why well-being, positive emotion are useful. And it has a lot to do with sort of, I guess, think of it like theory of evolution. In general, by theory of evolution, our negative emotions, such as anger, anxiety, are often used when we are in danger. And when we are in danger, we need to be what? Very focused, very tunnel vision, very limited, right? Because we have to focus on danger. I mean, just in general, it's what animals do. When they're in danger, they have to like focus on all the negative aspect of the environment in order to survive. Which, in other words, if you're always pissed off, you're gonna live in a quite limited way because you're always thinking one thing only, right? I mean, Chinese will call that 钻牛角尖, right? I mean, it's like once you're in negative motion, you can only think one way, you cannot see everything else, right? Right? There's only one way to look at your friends and no other way. Yeah, okay. On the other hand, when we are in a more positive motion, technically speaking, what it does is it broaden up our sense of creativity. Right? When we're in a positive mood, we're more likely to be creative. Right? We're more likely to be creative. We're more likely to be active. And when we're more creative, more active, we get to what? Have more interesting ideas, making more interesting relationship, which we have more what? Personal resources, more social support, right? More skills, more knowledge, more resiliency, which that enhance your health, your survival needs, right? Your personal needs, which bring more positive emotion, right? So it's like a positive spiral. Whereas when you are in the negative emotion, when you're in too much negative emotion, you're going the opposite direction, right? You're more tunnel vision. You're more like only seeing things in one way and not any other way. And you're gonna like drive away your relationship, drive away your resources, which make things harder. So these are sort of some of the basic theory on why it's good to cultivate, right? It's good to cultivate some loving kindness, some happiness, um, in general. So Let me see. Let me see how. Yeah, I could talk a little bit about it. So another area where psychologists do is to look up, like, what are the common explanations on why people live a good life. Like first we identify people who live a good life, but then let's look at what they do, right? That leads them to a good life. Like, what are the characteristic of people who experience perma? Like, what exactly are the cause for them to experience more perma? And there are many different kinds of research that we do. But interestingly, if we use like positive motion as an example, um, here's a good question. How much of your positive emotion do you think is contributed by, let's say, your genetics? Any idea? Do you think we're all born with the same level of happiness? Probably not, right? You know how some people are born more happier than other people? Yeah. I mean, some baby, when you first meet them, like, you just look at baby, some baby look very happy, the moment you met them, and some baby looks like look like Chucky, like it's like they're just pissed off. The moment they come out to the world, I'm like, you don't even know why, it's like, um, but the quick answer is, and based on different kind of studies, the quick answer is roughly 50%. It's based on genetics. Just like our muscles, like how some people just are stronger than other people. And that, roughly speaking, are like at least 50% is based on genetics.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah. Now, how about our environment? Like the circumstances in our environment. Let's say you born in a rich family and another one born in a poor family. How much does that contribute to your like level of positive emotion? Zero?
Because I see or hear examples of, right, rich people or rich kid, very unhappy, right, doing drugs and what
Yeah.
have you, where,
Yeah.
the on the other end of the spectrum, right, people
Uh-huh.
may not have a lot of financial resources, but they are happy as a
Yeah,
bird.
good. Well, good guess, good guess. But I think you're right track. It's definitely not that, not as significant as we imagine it to be, right? I mean, it's like, how people like feel that, it's important to surround ourselves with good food, right? Good clothing, good cars. But those environmental stuff, roughly speaking, are probably about 10%. Explain about 10% of your level of happiness. So, what happened if you're like unlucky, right? You're born angrier and you're born in the ghetto? How much percent you have left? You- We talk about 50% gene, right? 40%, I mean, 10% is what? Like circumstances, then you only have 40% left, right?
Mm.
Yeah. But that's the important part from research point of view. 40% of your happiness is actually based on what you do. So that's the important point. Okay. So this is like one of the interesting study intentional activity. About 40% of your happiness is based on intentional activities. And this is what what positive psychologists are really interested in. Like what do people do? Like what are the activities people do in terms to take care of those 40%? Like so that's what like positive psychologists are interesting, right? So if I'm gonna use another one, so it's just this is like one of the common interesting results from one of the psychology research, right? We may not born as happy by genetics. We may not be as lucky to live in the right environment, but about almost half of your positive emotions still based on what you choose to do. That's the point. Intentional activity. Now, what's karma? Karma is intentional activities, right? So you could choose to create good karma, or you could choose to do not so good karma. I mean, like now this is like that. Intention means there's a choice now, right? Intention, right? And that's where the research focus on then. So what kind of intentional activities, right? What kind of good karma behaviors that people do to bring themselves to a better state, right? And here are just some of the common things people do. And that the psychologists have identified, but also turn them into techniques. So for example, being grateful is one thing you can do to help yourself feel better. People who are able to savor their life, like savoring what they do, tend to live better. People who know where their life is going could make their life a little bit better. Okay. So these are so from our research, we turn what people do into sort of interventions, techniques that can be used to help people live a better life, such as any of these. So you see one of them is what? Mindfulness meditation, right? That's basically a Buddhist thing, you know? It's like, hey, right? It's now become like a commercial product that's been selling everywhere. You know, it's like if you meditate, you feel better, right? Which I don't know. I have a mixed feelings about that. It's like, you know, that's not the most important thing in Buddhism, but like it's like I think we meditate for a very important purpose, you know. We don't meditate to be healthier, you know. We meditate to be what? To be more compassionate. That's a very different concept here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think what we're talking about today really is just sort of define what does it mean to live a good life, but also talk about that there are things we can do to make our life a little bit better. All right. And if you look at sort of charm practice in daily life, here are some of the key aspect or key things I think a charm practitioner should do in general in daily life, right? Right. This is, you know, this is from like Sifu's teaching, right? Master's teaching, right? And I think Jimmy Yu also talked. I mean, this is really more sum up by Jimmy Yu basically, but I'm just using it here. But in general, our charm practice help us to be what? More relaxed, natural, and clear about what we're doing, about the task at hand, right? About the present moment, really, right? Right. We're not regretting, we're not worrying, right? We cultivate virtues, right? Those are like ethic, right? We cultivate, we have precepts, right, that help us to cultivate virtues, right? Um, we have correct livelihood, and we practice and connect with Sangha. These are like some of the good common activities a good Chan practitioner would do. And I think in general, I always remember that as Chan practitioner, we should at all time we should remember, like even right now, right? Even when I'm giving a talk, I should be what? Relaxed, natural, and clear, right? Now, relax here does not just mean your body is relaxed, but also means what? Mentally, you're relaxed. Even when you're playing sports, when you're doing something really fast, right? Sifu would say what? 要赶不要急, right? It's the idea what you always have this kind of relaxed attitude. So when we say relax, it's not just bodily relaxed, but mentally also relaxed, right? When you're relaxed, you're more natural, right? Right? We would do, and natural here, I would say, is not just like natural in terms of what we do, but natural also means what? Natural to be you. Natural here, another way of describing natural can also be just be authentic, be the authentic you, be original. Just know your original face, right? Like this is the you. You don't need to be anything different. That's what it meant to be natural. And clear here really has a sense of what? Being wakeful, right? It's not just seeing what you're doing clearly, but it's really has a wakeful attitude, but also more importantly, wakeful in a way that you have the right view. The clarity comes with the right view, right? The understanding of the empty nature of all phenomena, right? This is like, so theory is part of the being clear, right? And task at hand is the present moment, right? So we are always what have this kind of practice. And if you do these correctly, then I think they are all very what relevant to the perma we just talked about. Right? Makes sense, right? So I think I can stop here today. We could have more discussion if if people are interested.